I am Anna Maria Tammaro, if you don't know me, and together with Stefano Caselli, who is here, we are going to welcome you for the ROMOR summer school, which is from 1st July until 10 July. You are presumed to arrive on end of June to be in time for the beginning on 1st July. And we finish on 10 July with the presentation of your task, which will be described longer in the beginning of the summer school. This webinar has been planned to advance the structure of the course, to explain to you better what you are expected to experience in Parma. And I have also invited two of the speakers to anticipate the main context of the summer school. The main contexts are FAIR principles, in particular interoperability and reusing, the last two principles. And we are in the context of OpenAIRE, as Ilaria Fava is going to explain to you. I try to be short. And so the title of the summer school in Parma is Data Stewardship, and we try to focus on the concept of data stewardship, which is very complex and controversial, if you want, in this working both for scholars and for support service staff. But we have two outcomes at the end of the school. One is reusing, focusing on what does it mean, reusing, and support reusing in the full life cycle of the research outputs. And also we want to help you, if you have not already done, to plan a report or a campaign for the sustainability of the infrastructure ROMOR has built in your university. The pedagogy is very interactive, and also we try to give time to practical laboratory. In particular, we have planned a workshop on data carpentry, which will involve you in using also some software and tools to support or reuse data, outputs in general, visualization, and so on, extending the support services after the preservation, after the curation. We have also lecture, and we planned a visit to some university in Italy, where they have done very good progress in offering support services for research data management. In particular, we will go to Bologna, we will go to European University Institute in Florence, and we will have a video conference with Venice University. Here you have our address, if you already don't have. Particular my address is annamaria.tamaro@unipr, and for any question you can have at the end of this webinar, I am available. I am available also later after the webinar. I think that we can give the floor now to Ilaria, introducing the broad context of OpenAIRE and FAIR in the Open Science Project program in Europe. If there are any short questions you want to have now, or if you prefer, we can leave the question at the end of the webinar. Ilaria, to you the floor.
Yes, thanks, Anna Maria. Okay, now I see that I need Sarah's help to share my presentation now. But meanwhile, okay, thanks, great. So thanks a lot for the invitation. And just to give you a short introduction of who I am, I'm working for the OpenAIRE project, among other projects. And for OpenAIRE, I'm the outreach officer based at the Göttingen State University Library in Germany. So let's start. In this presentation, I will give you a short introduction of what is OpenAIRE and how do the FAIR principles intersect with the OpenAIRE activities. So all about OpenAIRE in short, because OpenAIRE is almost 10 years old project that is now in its fourth phase, because it started in December 2009, and last year in January 2018 we started the fourth phase called OpenAIRE Advance. During these almost 10 years, lots of things happened, not only on the OpenAIRE side, but also in the framework of the open access and open science policies at the EU level. And just to give you an example on how far OpenAIRE progressed, at the end of 2018, it moved from being a project to started a legal entity. So we are now in the process of welcoming new members to join the legal entity. As I said, in over these 10 years, many things happened at the EU level. And here you see all the progress that have been made. In 2008, the European Commission started this FP7 pilot because it ran over the 7th framework program. And it was a pilot about giving open access to publications in several, but not all, scientific domains funded for projects funded by the European Commission. This pilot then evolved into a mandate in Horizon 2020 that is a program that is currently running. And so the mandate was to provide open access to all the publications, and from until 2017 the EC also ran an open access pilot for research data. And this way it started transitioning from open access to open science. After 2017, the pilot became a mandate as well for open data. And so we are now in the phase where the mandate from the European Commission is for a default open access, both for publications and for data. For the next framework program that will be called Horizon Europe, open science will be the basis for doing research in Europe. We are still in the process to understand how it will shape, but I heard some interesting rumors about using preprints also as considered, so to consider preprints also as publications, full publications, in case of some embargoes or some issues. But that's it. So OpenAIRE evolved in a sense with the evolution of the EU policies on open access. Oh, sorry. So then moving from the theory to the practice, what is OpenAIRE doing? OpenAIRE is an European infrastructure that provides the social and technical links to move forward discourage communication and to shift towards open and reproducible science. In the practice, this means that OpenAIRE is a technical and human infrastructure that perform activities on both sides, so on the level of services and on the level of networking and policy alignment, but I will come to this later. Who is composing OpenAIRE? OpenAIRE is made of people, so this is our human side, in a sense. We have national open access desks distributed all over Europe, and these people are experts in open access and open science, recognized as such at the national level, and these people are generally involved in conversation with stakeholders like funders or ministries in some cases to shape the open science policies at the national level. We have 34 of these national open access desks, and these 34 NOADs, as we call them, are divided in 4 regions that are, for your reference, categorized at north, south, west, and east. They are not exactly corresponding to geographical coverage, but it's just for management purposes. And each of these regional national open access desk offices have a coordinator represented by institutions that are influential in the area. And the Göttingen State and University Library is the coordination of all this network of people working on open science in Europe. Then we have the infrastructure and service part that is distributed as well all over Europe. And it's developing services and maintaining the infrastructure that you see through the OpenAIRE portal. So I would say that basically you see a portal where you can perform some searches or download reports and so on, but there's much more beyond that. In OpenAIRE Advance, that is this 4th phase of the project, we decided to have several pilots to see how far we could go, just not staying in our realm of research for researchers, but also going a bit further. And so we have 2 pilots, one on open innovation and one on citizen science. They are both managed by some of our partners in Greece because they are the most skilled partners in the consortium to perform this kind of activities. In particular, the Open Innovation Program is run by Coralia, that is a company based in Athens that deals with industry, SMEs, and young innovators. And their task is to attract new and fresh ideas to OpenAIRE and to help OpenAIRE become more friendly and less, I wouldn't say research focused because the focus is still on research, but less research constrained in a way. The pilot in citizen science is focusing on students from the primary to the high school. And we have in particular, so some tangible outputs. We have a journal that is the Open School Journals for Open Science that is also part of the outcome of an European project called Open Schools for Open Science. And this Elinor Germaniki is the school that is responsible for this task. In OpenAIRE Advance, we also have task forces. So all the partners are participating in 2 task forces specifically. One on the legal aspects in dealing with research in open science. So how to create effective policies that are not breaching any copyright or any licenses and so on. And one task force on research data management. And last but not least, in OpenAIRE Advanced, we also have some data communities that are helping us understanding how better we can work with research communities to provide targeted services to them. Apart from these, what do we do in practice? We have three pillars, I would say. One is on policies, the second is on training, and the latter is on services. On policies, we have this network of national open access desks that is working on aligning policies on open access and open science all over Europe and beyond, because as you see from this little map, research is global, support is local. So apart from having expert people in Europe, OpenAIRE is also liaising with repository communities all over Europe, all over the world, sorry. So spanning from Latin America to Japan to Korea. And this effort is mainly targeted to answer different needs, because we understand that policies that can work in a specific country, like the Netherlands, for example, that is a country with strong support from the government, with a lot of policies and a lot of actions towards open science, is probably not working at the same time if like taken as it is and transported to Italy, where the situation for research is a bit different. So we try to benefit from having this large and extended network of people to do our best to progress open science in general. With training, we aim at empowering our network, first of all, but also all people that are interested in open science and open access. And we do training on open science policies, especially on how to align and harmonize policies or information for policymakers. And we had a webinar on this last Monday, and we are planning to continue on this topic with a series of webinar all over the year. So if you are interested in this topic, I would suggest you to subscribe to our newsletter, because there you will find all the information every month about what is planned for for the weeks to come. Another topic on which we deliver training and support in general is the infrastructure. So as you can imagine, OpenAIRE is made of providers from all over the world, and in order to become an OpenAIRE provider, content provider, a repository of whatever kind, like from literature to software to data, they have to be compatible with the OpenAIRE interoperability guidelines. So we provide services to content providers, and we train content providers on how to use these services to make out the most for both becoming an OpenAIRE compatible content provider, but also to benefit from joining this network. And as you can imagine, being an EU-funded project that is putting into practice the Commission's policies and mandates on open access to research information, so literature and publications and open data, we also provide training on how to become or how to fulfill the mandate from the European Commission on these two topics. And especially, we perform a week of trainings during the Open Access Week in October, and the training on how to comply with the EC mandate is like a standing point, a standing item. And if you're interested in this, on our website, there's a link of the recordings of all previous webinars that we had. We don't only provide training centrally, so based on the experts that OpenAIRE is connected with thanks to the network that we are developing in Europe, but also our national open access desks are providing training to specific stakeholders at the national level. And also the NOADs are a key pillar in our support activities, because they are the people that are known at the national level and are the people to which everybody having a question is basically going to have an answer. So the NOADs are delivering training through webinars and through at least one workshop per year. Plus, they are translating all the OpenAIRE resources into their local language to make them more appealing and understandable to the local communities. And last but not least, they are also providing support to research communities, data providers, content providers, and so on via the help desk. And then we are coming to the services. So our services are more than 15, so there are many, and they have been developed all over the years. And they are, I would say, divided in 5 categories. For content providers, because as I mentioned before, we have lots of repository of whatever kind providing content to OpenAIRE. So we developed specific services to them. We also thought about providing some kind of aiding tools to research managers that want to monitor how a project is going into OpenAIRE. For example, how many publications are linked to a project. And this is not the only aiding tool, because some other resources that we provide are, for example, the chance to download the report of all the publication data and software produced in a project to reuse this information on the European Commission portal for reporting purposes. I mentioned before that we have several research communities in OpenAIRE because we want to deliver targeted services to them. So one service is specifically about research community, and we provide to them a dashboard through which each research community can monitor what's going on, because as you can imagine, research communities are global. They are not just local, apart from specific disciplines, but in general research communities are global, so and cross-national. So with this dashboard, the aim is to provide them with a tool through which they can see what's going on in a community, who's working on a specific topic, and so on. We also have services for researchers because they might be interested in finding information not only the metadata but also the full text of specific research output, and also they might be interested in claiming that a publication is connected to a specific project. We also have services for developers because with all these huge amount of information, meaning metadata, full text, and links between projects, publications, and data, someone else might be interested in reusing the information graph that sits behind the OpenAIRE portal. And we also make this available. In this slide, you see like an overview of the services. And on the OpenAIRE portal, you will have access to all of them. In particular, the research community dashboard that is labeled as OpenAIRE Connect is available on the beta portal of the OpenAIRE website, but not because it's not fully developed, but because on beta we can experiment more on how we play with the data. So, like, resuming, we provide services for all stakeholders. And in case you are interested in knowing more about OpenAIRE services, or you are interested in testing some of these services, I warmly encourage you to get in touch because we are creating a user board that we would like to involve in some testing and feedback on the services we are developing, just to make sure that we are doing the right thing. Then moving to FAIR. So Anna Maria in the introduction mentioned that OpenAIRE fits particularly into the two latest principles that are interoperability and reusing. I would say that for interoperability, OpenAIRE is the principle for interoperability is particularly relevant for OpenAIRE because of all these amounts of repositories from all over the world that need to be providing their information based on interoperability guidelines. And this is key in understanding how different infrastructure can work together if only they are interoperable. In particular, in the fourth version of the interoperability guidelines of OpenAIRE, that is the current one, the interoperability guidelines not only relate to publications, but they also provide information on how to make interoperable within the context of OpenAIRE data and software. So coming back to the FAIR principles. FAIR principles are 4 very easy and very straightforward principles. So here you see how the acronyms develop. So F is for findable, A is for accessible, I is for interoperable, and R is for reusable. And the FAIR principles ensure that all research data are shared in a way that is understandable both for human and for machines, and in a way that it enables and enhances the reuse of these data. Because otherwise, if you produce data for yourself only, they are useless. I mean, yeah, you will be able to use the data by yourself and on your own, but if you don't share your research, it's like your research never happened. And what means in particular be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable? In the following 2 slides, you will see the declination of all the points. For example, to be findable, the metadata of the data, so we are not speaking about only making the dataset findable. Before you make the dataset findable, you have to make the metadata, so the description of and the information of what you put in the dataset findable, because otherwise no one will notice that it's in there. So you should use the richest metadata possible to describe exactly what's in there, what kind of software you used, and how people can perform or reuse that information to arrive and to come to the same results that you had. And also, to be findable, a key principle of the FAIR is that all information has to have a persistent identifier. So I think that the most used in the world is the DOI, the Digital Object Identifier, and this is a key requirement for everything to be findable. Because if you have a DOI, you can find that resource wherever it is and whenever you change the website that is hosting it. For being accessible, metadata that are searchable using their identifier, they have to be accessible via standard protocols. And this is why OpenAIRE is so much insisting on interoperability guidelines, because this is the common level of speaking of machines. And if something is accessible for a machine, it's generally accessible for a human as well. Then interoperability. I think I already said something, but it's very important to remark that the metadata should use a formal, standardized way of describing the object, because otherwise it's useless. And an interesting thing is that metadata shall include also the references to other metadata, so that to cross-link research. Last but not least, the other principle is that information should be reusable. And to be reusable, they have to be well described. So everything is like well connected, and it really needs to be working in this way to make things like more accessible and to make everything more open, even though fair doesn't mean necessarily open, because when Horizon 2020 started, the mantra, in a sense, for the open research data pilot was as open as possible, as close as necessary, because not all the data can be open, and this is a fact. But if the data that can be made open are open as such, they can be shared under restrictions or under proper licenses and be fair. And just remarking again this fact, making data fair, so complying to the above mentioned principles, ensure that the data can be found, accessed, and reused by whoever. And if these data are not open, because for whatever reason they can't be open, if the information is available on who created the data, someone can come to you and ask you the possibility to access your data because they are relevant to a research that this person is performing. And you might want to give access to the single person, even though you're not providing access to the data openly. So it's a very intriguing process, this one of FAIR. And especially the process of implementing FAIR is quite broad in a sense, because it doesn't involve specific technologies and not standard or strict criteria. For example, it's not based on semantic technologies full stop. So FAIR can be very flexible in a sense, and especially research communities can decide how far they want to go in making FAIR the principles, but customizing FAIR according to their research workflows and research practices. And this comes to my last slide, that is about this very important report from the expert group from on FAIR data from the European Commission that was issued at the end of last year. And the title of this report is Turning FAIR into Reality. And this report outlines 27 recommendations overall. 15 are priority recommendations and 12 are supporting recommendations. For example, among the 15 recommendations that might be interesting and relevant for you, there are there's something like ensure that data management is performed using data management plans. So again, using standard formats like data management plans to ensure that data management is well performed and even understandable if someone is jumping in a project after 1 year from its start, not knowing anything about what has happened before, but just looking at the data management plan, this person can understand what's going on. Stress is also put in these priority recommendations on training and skills, and here is like a point for Peter to explain this further, because another principle is to recognize and reward fair data and data stewardship, because developing the skills to understand how to include the FAIR principles into the daily workflows of research is definitely important, because otherwise they will just stay in the theoretical world and not ever become practice. And I think that's it. If you want to ask me any questions, you can do now, or you can, here you have my email, and you can drop me whatever question you have, and especially if you are interested in knowing more about specific services of OpenAIRE.
Thank you very much, Ilaria. It was very comprehensive. And for some of the participants, probably has been a repetition, but because this time in Parma we will have other participants never involved in this presentation of FAIR, I think your presentation was very useful. I just have a question and then ask the participant to give their question too. And my question is, could our Palestinian colleague be involved in OpenAIRE, also in an active way, not only as a participant passive?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm thinking, for example, becoming partner in the legal entity, because we don't have much representation from that part of the world. Even though it's very close to us as Europe, there's not so much representation from the eastern part of the world. So for sure, our Palestinian colleague could, if they're interested, could become partners in the OpenAIRE legal entity. And on the OpenAIRE website, under the About section, there are all the information on how to join. And to get started in more broadly and generally speaking with OpenAIRE, you are more than welcome to participate in our webinars, because as I said, they are very broad in contents, and you can also suggest topics and also suggest speakers if you are aware of someone in your community that is particularly skilled and can provide some good training. And also, another point is that if you have a repository in your institution, you might want to consider to register it as OpenAIRE compliant, because that would give a boost to the visibility of the research that is contained in there. And something that I forgot to mention before is that not only repositories containing projects linked to EU-funded projects can be registered as OpenAIRE compatible. Basically, we are gathering information to everywhere just to aggregate it and make it more visible as much visible as possible.